goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
Welcome to another episode of the Out of Bounds podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. I'm Nate Sharman, joined as always by Josh Durso. Josh, another golf week in the books. A little bit cold up here in the Northeast, but they didn't spare the warmth and the fireworks over in Dubai.
Plenty of warmth over there. What a wild stretch of 4 days of not knowing whether it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Wasn't that amazing? Like every single time I got on Twitter over the weekend, golf Twitter was collectively trying to figure out what day of the week it was.
Yeah, but you had the Farmers starting on Wednesday to avoid football on Sunday, and then you had a Monday finish in Dubai due to time zones and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was a completely wild, wonky thing.
It's certainly fun to follow two golf tournaments simultaneously, though, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So obviously, the biggest story that came out of the past weekend, we'll get into the Farmers after, but I think the biggest story was one, Teegate, and then for those who might have missed it, you've got this exchange between Rory and Patrick Reed. Not much of an exchange, but Patrick Reed was trying to approach and say hello to Rory. He wasn't having it. He was working with his TrackMan, it looked like, or maybe just doing something to not have to talk to Patrick Reed, who's just happy. Right. So as Patrick Reed's walking away, he flicks a tee at him, kind of underhand toss situation, morphed into Teegate, and then, of course, final round. It's between the two of them coming down the stretch, and Rory just drains an incredible putt, left to right breaker, 20-footer. Right. And incredible finish. Before we get into that finish and the victory and what it means for Rory, I'm curious what your takeaway was from what everybody's referring to now as Teegate.
Yeah, so Teegate. Yeah, it's barely a throw. It's an underhand flick, like you said.
It's a bad throw.
Yeah.
If you're throwing to make an impact, it's the worst throw you can make, right?
But it's the biggest golf physical drama that we can come up with. This is basically, in my mind, this is essential to this is the same thing as you get in baseball. You get a bench clearing brawl. Well, you get a thrown tee on the range in golf. This is just kind of how it works.
Underhand toss.
Yep.
Underhand toss. It was as physical as we can get.
Right. It's just interesting to see that the reasoning behind it. So Patrick Reed goes over to Rory McIlroy to almost say hello, like you said, just to see if they're in good graces. Rory's got none of that. Whether he's looking at his TrackMan or looking at his watch or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, doesn't acknowledge him, doesn't even look at him. Patrick Reed throws the tee at him, like you said. And it comes out later, the Rory's talking in his press conference, that Patrick Reed subpoenaed him on Christmas Eve.
Served him it's not like it's June and we're 6 months removed from that. It's still fresh. You're a month away.
Rory, yes, Christmas Eve is obviously a family day, right? So clearly. Rory doesn't want anything. I doubt he even looks at a golf club on Christmas Eve, right? So he doesn't. So he gets this subpoena at his door, and you're like, oh, come on, man, I'm just trying to enjoy my family. So that's one reason why Rory, and I stand by that on Rory, not talking to Patrick Reed. You get sued a month, you get subpoenaed a month ago, and you want this guy you want to be buddy with him? No, that's just not how this works. So Rory's basically like, Patrick, if you want to go down this road, I'll go down this road with you, but this is how it's going to be. And
a lot of the live guys have been kind of vocally opposed to Rory. So even without
he's
the subpoena, with PGA, why would you go out of your way? It's almost like you're seeking out some kind of reaction or not reaction.
Yeah.
I just think it's weird enough, given the context of all the lawsuits that the Reed camp is pushed. The one theory that I saw online that I guess I can't even remember who tweeted it out, but a couple posed the question of how much does he know? How much does he know about the intricacies of the lawsuits that are coming out from his camp, the Reed camp? I mean,
Hope he knows.
obviously there's a lot of chatter about how much his wife controls the narrative, obviously, and the rest of his family, for that matter.
That's a cop
or the
out,
rest
though.
of the family, I guess.
Use golf facts, yeah.
Have you not seen the coverage of it? If you aren't aware of what
Right.
lawsuits you're filing on your own behalf against the rest of the world, are you paying attention to like the news or anything? Like,
Right.
I don't know. To me, I don't really understand why he would have thought that Rory would have been receptive to shaking his hand or talking to him.
Yeah, that's
Any other,
very strange to me.
you could almost say that like it could work with any other live player and Rory, or any live player and PGA Tour player, because there isn't any like litigation happening between players for the most part. So it's a bizarre situation. But
Right. And then we had another scandal out of this, right? You have another Patrick Reed's cheating scandal.
yeah, which is just, by now you've
Allegedly.
seen the video. Patrick Reed hits an errant tee shot. It gets caught up in one of 3 trees, right? We don't know which. Gets lodged into basically the protrusions from said tree.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other golf balls up there. Reed's ball is apparently identified in basically the best potential spot. And life goes on, but it becomes, to me, I've watched the video a ton of times, and, the question is, was this a more bold example of Reed sidestepping the rules in some way, shape, or form? To me, I think if you think Patrick Reed's a cheater, you think he's a cheater. Nothing is.
Right.
These new instances aren't going to change.
No, they don't.
And to me, this is like so much of it's effectively a non-story in my mind, because
It's a non-story if it's any other golfer in the world. It's a non-story.
yeah, and not only that, but it's, there is a chance that it ricocheted from one tree to another. I mean, it's entirely possible.
Right. I think the problem people have is that it looks like, I'm looking, that's Paul's got it up on the screen, I'm looking at it right now. It looks like it hits that first tree by the slowed down version, and those are like almost like palm fronds, those kind of trees.
Yeah.
So they hit that tree and they don't go forward. I mean, you have trees that balls will ricochet forward. These trees are almost kind of engulfing, and they'll either like swallow the ball like what happened, or they'll kick it backwards towards the tee box where they came from. So it's an interesting in that sense, but just watching the video and you can slow it down. Brandel Chambly had a whole thing on Golf Channel about it, about how he believes that Patrick Reed was stretching the rule, right? And I know I've been watching the video, and you slow it down frame by frame, and you're looking at this little golf ball, and it's just like, it's almost to me like what are we doing almost? It's it almost feels like a little bit of a stretch, even though Patrick Reed does have so much of a history of cheating, of known cheating. And his other cheating scandals are ones you can see, like grounding the club in the bunker. That's cut and dry. Either you touched the sand or you didn't. Like, it's
Right.
not.
Well,
You can't
and
stretch that rule out at all.
So to that end, if you go to Brandel's Twitter, you can see the video, and they show the video, and they literally slow it down to frame by frame. And when they do that, you see how far the ball is moving on screen, frame by frame, and it's very difficult to be able to tell what happens to that golf ball after it comes into contact with a tree. It just is. Like, you wouldn't be able to see that next move, I don't think, even if the ball did go, say, shot left and maybe down, or right and down. I just think it's tough. And like you said, unlike the other scenarios, not nearly as black and white. This one is very kind of ambiguous and gray, and it's hard to really put your finger on like what was happening or not, unless they were going to literally have just empty all of the trees, literally have somebody there. Clearly, there's a bunch of golf balls up there. Just empty the trees of all the golf balls and make that determination. Obviously, you couldn't do that in real time, but it just goes back to the point.
I mean, it's if any other golfer's playing, it's my ball's up in that tree. You take relief based on the rule book, and you play on.
Yeah,
And we're not even talking about it. So I mean, I know that I agree that Patrick Reed is a cheater. We've seen this in the past from him, but in this instance, I don't think he was trying to stretch the rule.
Yeah, I agree. So obviously, let's get to that finish. Rory bangs in an awesome putt on the last hole.
Finishes birdie.
Gets the W. Is this a statement victory for Rory McIlroy and or the PGA Tour because it came down to the last 2 holes with Patrick Reed in the group?
I think so, yes. And I think that because, we saw this in the 2023 season, the year 2023. We haven't seen Rory on the PGA Tour yet. And we were talking about, a month ago, we were talking about what's that mean? Why is Rory McIlroy not playing in the PGA Tour so far with these elevated events and him being kind of the poster boy for them? And now it feels totally validated that Rory's not playing in the PGA Tour so far this season. He hasn't made those because he's able to be successful overseas, and this is an absolutely huge headline that he was able to make for the PGA Tour. So it just feels kind of vindicated, if you will, that Rory wasn't around in this PGA Tour, therefore making it a statement win for the PGA Tour in my mind.
Yeah, I think because these opportunities are going to be so few and far in between. Where
when are Rory and Reed going to play against each other?
PGA and Live guys playing against one another.
Major,
they become even bigger than the events that they were before. And obviously, the tournament in Dubai is a huge tournament every year. This is not a run of the mill Euro event that just
everyone was waking up Monday morning at 7 o'clock going to work, and whether it was on the radio you're turning it on or kind of in the background as you work, you wanted to know what happened.
Yeah,
it was big news.
So I don't think it's as much of a statement win for the tour, I think, as it is Rory, because after watching the Farmers, and we're going to talk about the Farmers here in a minute, I just think with all of the headlines lately about Jon Rahm and him being the most dominant player right now and just being head and shoulders above everybody else,
right?
I think this is a statement win in that regard for Rory to say, hold on now. This is the guy that we saw come down the stretch in 2022. And this is the best golfer on the planet.
Right. Agreed.
And I feel pretty it seems like there are more and more people now in the Jon Rahm is the best golfer in the world right now camp. And I just feel like it's almost baseless. Just because you've won a couple events now in a very young season. We saw Scotty rattle off an incredible run in the start of 2022, but by the end of the season, he was almost a non-factor, and we saw how he literally unraveled in the last day of the final FedEx event.
I think it was the way that Rahm went and got Morikawa in that first tournament. I think that really put people on the map.
Yeah, and is he one of the 2 or 3 best golfers in the world right now? If I'm creating a top 3, he's in my top 3. But he's not number 1.
Right.
There needs to be a more consistent long-term body of work, I guess.
Yeah, I that's fine. I agree with that. I think a bigger win for the PGA Tour though was how they just keep hitting huge storylines out of their own tour.
Yeah.
With the Farmers this week, Max Homa finishes off his dominant performance at the Farmers. He played well on Sunday, especially, and Saturday too, and was able to get his sixth PGA Tour victory, and 4 of them are now in California, which I think is really cool. The California kid being able to come out with a victory. Aforementioned Jon Rahm was kind of in it again to try to win his 3rd start in a row. Didn't play too well on Sunday. But, Homa gets the victory. A couple other headlines out of that, too, which were really fun, was that on-course interview. And that's something I really want to talk about the most, even more than Homa's victory. Did you have a chance to see that?
I did. I like the concept. I would assume that if you're going to test it on a guy, Max is the guy to test it on because he's media savvy. He's done the whole podcast saying he can carry himself while also performing at that level. It adds another layer. Makes it interesting. Makes it interesting to more casual fans, I think.
And how much of a win was it too? This is probably something that they floated around, producers and stuff. And, you're always thinking, a player's going to want to do this. They might think that it's going to hurt them. It's pretty cool to see the first one they ever do, Max Homa goes and wins the tournament. So that's going to help to try to get guys to do it again. You might want to do the on-course interview bump, talk to Trevor Immelman. And, while you're on the course, I thought that was so cool. And, we talked so much about what the PGA Tour needs to do in order to capitalize more viewers and get them to stay and watch. And I think they hit the nail right on the head, getting players to talk about their either whether it be about their shot, about their hole, about their tournament as it's going on.
Yeah, and I think, relating it back to some of the big storylines we saw last year, it's the reason why a guy like Cam Smith going to LIV isn't that big a deal in the grand scheme of things, because the PGA Tour, if it's going to be successful in the future, and frankly any other tour, in golf, you need to build personalities. You need to build personalities that are larger than life, larger than golf. And Max is a really good example of someone who fits the bill. That aside, it'll be interesting to see how often that they are able to implement this. Is this going to be a daily thing? Is it going to be something that we start to see like more of? Could we eventually see like a whole mic'd up scenario where like the player is just mic'd up their entire round in the way that we see other sports have tried or done, team sports? Where does Max sit now in the landscape of best golfers in the world?
I think he could have a really big year. The U.S. Open's at Torrey Pines again this year.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that he contends well there and in the other majors too. Probably, I don't know, in that 5 to 7 range, in that 7-ish range.
It's interesting because when I start to think about, I think there are guys like Justin Thomas, who I would say fit very comfortably in that like 5 to 10 range.
Justin Thomas is in my top 5.
I put it in that 4 or 5 range.
Yeah, in that 3 to 5.
But if we're talking about best golfers right now, which is basically an extension of that Rahm conversation, right?
Right.
Like
then Homa's there, yes, for sure.
Homa, Rahm, Rory. Like to me, they're the 3 best golf. And for Max to be where he is now, and listening to the post tournament interview on course right after he had won, the interviewer brings up, your first year, just a few years ago, you made $18,000.
Right.
And now you've won 6 times in such a short window. And, I think he won something like $1.4 million from this last.
Yeah, they got right on there. 1.4, 1.5, yeah.
So just an incredible success story. And, I think a really well-balanced one, too, because one thing that I don't think gets quite as much play now that so much focus is on how good he's playing and how good he is the struggles he had with mental health.
Yes.
Is the kind of like choice he had to make about being this kind of like 1 foot in media, 1 foot in professional golf guy, where he had to make some really tough choices to turn the corner and get to where he is now.
Right. You talk about the podcast he had with Shane Bacon.
Yeah.
And I love that podcast. It was really sad to see Max have to go, but he's been winning in bunches since.
Yeah, and he is, like you said, he's going to be a favorite at all of the majors now,
especially Torrey Pines. Yes.
Especially Torrey Pines. I mean, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, if you're picking favorites for the Masters, I don't see why you wouldn't have, a Max Homa in your top 3 to 5.
I don't think he's played well at Augusta yet. So that's the only issue. The only way that people are away from him, I think.
But there again, he's had such a dramatic turn in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. Have we seen this version of Max at Augusta? Maybe other than last year. I don't know.
Yeah, and he's starting to gain confidence on that track too. I think Augusta is a little bit more intimidating. Just with everything around it being the Masters. So I think he's going to start to gain. Congrats on Tony Finau, by the way.
I was going to say before we talk about this coming week, how about this? I finally picked Tony Finau, and no, he didn't win, but he had an incredible showing compared to what my picks have been doing.
Not gonna lie, I was kind of hoping you missed the cut for the content there.
That would have been about right. But that would have set me up to come back here and say, see, all of the things that I said last year about Tony Finau, even though he went off and had one hell of a run on me for it, I probably would have been based on it. I could have said it.
All right, let's get into this week. This week's fun. The AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Really a lot of fun because there's so many good AMs that play, so many big names. We'll go through some of those big names. Taking a look at the favorites, Matt Fitzpatrick is the favorite. That'll tell you about what this field means. He's at about 1,100 on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Right behind him, Victor Hovland, Jordan Spieth, 1,200. Just that top 3. No one being shorter than 10 to 1. Tells you a little bit about the field too. But we're gonna do something a little different with picks this week, but let's do something a little bit more traditional first, and let's both give a guy that we're gonna go with.
Jordan Spieth. Easy.
All
I don't
right.
think that's a. I don't think that's a. I think he's been hanging around.
Yeah, he's in
and I think he's due. We haven't seen him really like bust out of the shell yet, but he's had some moments. He's contended for bits and pieces of events that he's played so far. So I think this could be a big weekend. Hopefully he just doesn't die. Like he almost died last year, I think, at this event, right? Almost fell into
He's
the
off
hole.
the cliff, yeah.
So fell off the cliff there. He stays alive. He gets a win. It'll be a great weekend for Jordan Spieth.
All right, I wasn't thinking about the alive versus deceased factor when picking my picks. I'm going to go with Victor Hovland. He's been playing well lately, and I think he'll be prized for a big finish here at Pebble. But let's go into DFS. That's something we introduced this week. Myself, Josh, and Paul's picks. Paul, get them up on the screen here pretty quick. And we'll go through our picks, and I think this will just be kind of fun. I know it's kind of a tough week to start with this field that's not great. But for our audio listeners, I'll run through, starting with myself. I have Victor Hovland, Mav McNeely, Matthew Neesmith, Webb Simpson, my fellow Canadian Nick Taylor, and former Masters champion Danny Willett.
Oh, you see, me too. Me too on that one. I got Ben on, Matt Fitzpatrick, Hoagie because defending champion. Why not? He'll be obviously he's going to be owned times a billion because he's defending. We've got Lower Van Ruyen, and then Danny Willett. I know you don't love my pick on Eric there, but
is he gonna be wearing those joggers where he's wearing those floods?
You know what? I'm gonna overlook his wardrobe choice this weekend. Hopefully,
we're talking so much about wardrobe lately on the PGA Tour.
But you know what? He's got a couple top tens. Out of 5 out of 8 cuts made.
Yep.
I like him at $8,000 on the spend there. I think it's an easy grab.
And last but certainly not least, we'll go with Paul's picks. He's got both of our picks this week. He's got Jordan Spieth and Victor Hovland. Then he goes to Lanto Griffin, S. Kim, Bo Hostler, and Brian Gay rounding out. So he's got the former Texas Longhorn, Bo Hostler.
That is a
friend
choice.
of the podcast, Phil Hostler.
That's a choice.
My logic behind much of this is a similar one I follow for when I dabble in the NASCAR DFS for like Daytona and Talladega with just take like 3 hardcore favorites and then 3 guys at the bottom because who knows what will happen.
I used to do that. So
he's got nobody in the AK range. He's got all 10s and then 7, 6 and below.
So before the podcast happened, Paul, Nate would absolutely crush me for picking guys who didn't even have like an avatar. Like I would pick guys so far.
I got
down
2 guys
on the
without an
list
avatar this week
who just didn't have an avatar, and it's like okay, like these guys were just in as alternate. Like yeah.
Oh man.
You really like the Pro-Am or the Am element
Yes.
of this Pro-Am weekend.
Yeah, it's fun.
Who are some of the big names that are going to be at this thing?
Start with my personal favorite, Josh Allen. He withdrew from the Pro Bowl to play in this, just like he did last year. He's not playing on the Pro Bowl. I'm gonna go play golf out in
Why go play
California.
flag football?
So some other guys: Eric Church, Larry Fitzgerald, Pau Gasol, Macklemore, Bill Murray, Jake Owen, Buster Posey, Schoolboy Q, Aaron Rodgers, Darius Rucker, Steve Young, Alex Smith, former Washington football great Alex Smith. That is.
That's right. You put respect on his name.
I think it's just fun to watch these AMs play. I think they do 2 pros and an AM, I believe. So we'll be able to watch. I'm not sure who won the event last year for the AMs, but it's always fun to watch Bill Murray. Bill Murray's he's been playing in this event forever, and he always puts on a fun scene. So does Macklemore and Schoolboy Q.
Yeah, I'm always curious to see who the basically the best of the best are that come out of this thing because I think everybody's at times taken aback or a little bit surprised at some of the golfers that stand out.
I think Larry Fitzgerald's pretty good.
I think Larry Fitzgerald's pretty good. Obviously, we've seen Tony Romo playing this thing before. Yep. Really good.
If basketball wasn't going on, Steph Curry would just come and win it.
Yeah. Jake Owen, another guy, really, really good player. I believe he played in high school and college. But yeah, it goes, it's unique. I wish the tour did more with it. Yeah. It feels like it kind of gets lost in the shuffle of the quote-unquote normal tournament, like the pro tournament. Obviously, that's why everybody's there. Right. But I think when you have these, again, if you're getting back to like how do you build golf as kind of this thing that more than just dedicated like golf fans care about, you've got all of these celebrities just hanging around.
And I'm blanking on the name of the tournament. Just totally blanking out of the tournament they do every year. I think it's in the spring, where they have all the pros, all the AMs play. There's no pros. It's just AMs, and like you'll have guys like throwing footballs into the crowd and stuff like that. And that part's cool.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like when you see
that tournament's going to come to me right when I'm done with this.
You see obviously the father-son, the PNC. Like the tour has now kind of started to dabble in these kind of throwaway events that are a little more fun and a little less serious.
Right.
And I just think that there's more market for it, and really it should be something that the tour leans into.
Yeah, us Bills fans, we love watching Josh Allen up there taking a swing at it.
Wouldn't you guys rather be watching him in the Super Bowl?
Yes, exactly. If he was in the Super Bowl, he wouldn't be there. But it's too quick to talk about that, Josh. We just had that happen about 2 weeks ago.
So our last topic for the day here is an interesting tweet. Obviously, the Monday Q Twitter feed is one that we watch a heck of a lot. So Monday Q dropped this tweet. You're seeing it on the screen now, where at a mini tour event, a bucket of balls costs $17.03. So we're going to say make what you will of that. But the main gripes were, 1, the cost, and 2, the extra 3 cents. And I got to agree with that second part, especially. Like, there is nothing more aggravating than seeing your total be something dollars and 2 pennies or 3 pennies.
Right.
But question here. Should the PGA Tour be working toward creating a cleaner, more cost-effective path for would-be Korn Ferry PGA Tour players?
Yeah, that would be ideal. Monday Q has done a really great job over the years documenting how much it costs to be a aspiring pro, whether it be Monday Q or Mini Tour or any of those lower-level tours. It's he makes the joke often, I joke lightly, but you play in a Monday Q event and you pay a couple $100 for a practice round, a couple $100 to play in it, range balls, you got to transport to get there. The cost keeps going up and up just to make a PGA Tour event, and then you shoot 68 and you lose by 5.
Yeah.
So it's just demoralizing. It's so hard, and it's something that is so challenging with golf, because just trying to find a way to get guys that may be not as well off growing up in the game of golf. It's just such a hard. So like you said, finding a way for the PGA Tour to somehow subsidize this would be the most ideal way to do this.
Yeah, and I just think like it could be more organized, because you've got mini tours all over the country. It's not like there's just one. So it's, you've got this kind of hodgepodge of different mini tours and methods, and you've got basically different rules in different spots everywhere you go. Obviously varying costs depending on the event, the mini tour event that you're at. I just think that in the same way that, you've got the D-League and you've got some other sports that have created a very clean and sensible path forward for would-be players or aspiring players, I just think it's in the best interest of the tour to do so, because I think, if nothing else, what we've learned from the Monday Q Rise, I'm referring to the Twitter account and the guy that runs it, and the following that it's established, is that these are stories people are interested in.
Oh, for sure.
These are stories. It's far more relatable to see a guy even struggling or failing in a mini tour event to your casual golf fan, especially the ones that care about the storylines and things like that, than it is to watch John Rahm, rattle off, go 9 under in a span of, 12 holes. Far more relatable in the first scenario.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, people, your main event is always going to be your top 50, top 60 guys, of course. But to basically just pretend like the mini tour has no value, or like that lowest level has no value.
Right.
I say it's a missed opportunity. I think there's a whole bunch of different ways that the tour could not only build it and create it, but be able to have it be its own sustainable model.
And to me, they've made strides, establishing a minimum for some of those lower players and trying to get them in, but that doesn't do a whole ton for the mini tours. So it seems like they've shown like they wanted help and they're just trying to figure out logistically the best way to do it. That's in my mind. So hopefully we do see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if nothing else, creating a scenario where they're all affiliated and they're all in, working toward the same outcome and certain costs. I'm not saying it has to be a completely free ride, but should a bucket of balls for a guy playing in one mini tour event cost $17.03 and then $7 in another one,
Right.
or $25 in another? Like, there's just some things that should be kind of maintained and organized a little better. And if you're the PGA Tour, you can organize mini tour golf. It's not that complicated. It wouldn't be that complicated for the largest golf entity on the planet, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, that's just kind of, and obviously we see tons of those. We're going to keep seeing tons of those, and that's, I don't have very high expectations for the tour getting that straightened out.
All right, I think that's enough for today. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Out of Bounds podcast here on fingerlakes1.com. Be sure to follow us over on TikTok and on Twitter. And remember, whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website at fingerlakes1.com. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Out of Bounds FL1. See you next time on Out of Bounds.